All right, welcome back to Hurricane Hub Live. We've got a very special guest tonight on the show, folks. I want to welcome to the show Lieutenant Commander Chris Wood, who is a Hurricane Hunter pilot with NOAA. Sir, welcome to the show. I'm happy you could join us tonight.
Happy to be here.
Now, Lieutenant Commander, tell us a little bit about your background and how you became one of the most coveted people in the entirety of meteorology that gets to fly into hurricanes. I mean, we look up to you, and you guys, you're like our hero.
Yeah, well, we're definitely a very small group of folks that get the opportunity to do this. Myself, I'm a commissioned officer with the NOAA Corps, which is just like a lot of the other armed services that you'll find. So I went through a commissioning, went through flight training with them. I flew some of the aircraft, eventually got qualified on the P3 Hurricane Hunter aircraft, and I've been doing this now for about 5 years.
Now, of the P3 Orion aircraft, there's the nicknames of Kermit and Miss Piggy. Which one do you fly?
So we fly either whatever aircraft's available that's necessary to do the mission at the time. So right now I'm flying Miss Piggy, but that's just because we're waiting for Kermit to get out of some last-minute maintenance that it needs to have done prior to actually being ready for hurricane season.
And I'm interested in the whole process. So what goes into a mission starting for a hurricane? Like, are you guys sitting at the hangar and an alarm goes off that says you got to go out into the storm? What's the process? Where does the call come from to go and venture out into the storm?
Yeah, so the National Hurricane Center is going to be constantly evaluating what's going on out around the world and looking for threats. And when they identify a threat, they're going to basically put out a tasking for us, and we'll get that generally a couple days ahead of time if conditions are allowing us to have that kind of warning. Sometimes they come out a little bit more rapidly than that, but usually we have a couple days notice that there's something of interest out there that they're kind of tracking, and we start to prepare everything that we need to do, and then we are ready to go at that point in time. So we usually have a couple days head start. The models allow us that for the most part, but we're pretty much ready to go within 24 hours at any point in time.
Now, I know there's the Hurricane Hunters, the NOAA segment of it, and then there's the U.S. Air Force Reserve as well. How does that work, the partnership? When you're both going into the same storm, are you guys alternating missions? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so our aircrafts are very similar in capability, but not entirely. Our Hurricane Hunter aircraft have a lot more scientific capability than the Air Force does, and so we'll generally end up getting different styles of mission that we need to do. So the Hurricane Center will ask for specific things, and then they'll task either the Air Force or us, depending on what it is they're asking about. We can do a lot of the same things, but some of the unique capabilities that our aircraft have are our tail Doppler radar, which allows us to provide a lot more information into the models versus just a lot more of the in situ data that the Air Force is out there collecting, getting the fixes on the center of the storm and stuff like that.
All right, interesting. I want to take you down memory lane. What was the very first storm that you flew into?
So the very first storm I had the opportunity to fly into was Hurricane Earl back in 2022. And that was definitely a very eye-opening experience for me.
Now, explain it. Like, what was it like the first time going into a storm? What was the most memorable part of it?
So I think the really unique thing, and this is true about not just Earl, but every hurricane, is you don't really know what to expect, right? You have an idea, maybe you've lived through a hurricane, making landfall at, where you live, and you've seen what that looks like. But flying through these storms is very, very dynamic, and it changes every time we fly through. And we're normally flying through 3 to 5 times every time we go get airborne. You can do that for 5 or 6 days. You could go through the same storm 30 plus times. Every one of those passes is going to be different. And a storm could give you a really easy ride one time, almost, am I in a hurricane kind of an idea, like driving down the interstate. And then the next time you're driving down one of the worst, dirt bumpy roads that you've ever experienced, right? And you're just getting rocked around, and it's the same storm, maybe just an hour or two apart from each other. So it's very different every time. And that was probably one of the most, crazy things that you kind of experience the first few times, is just how different it is every time you go.
Interesting. Now, going down that same road, what's been the most violent storm that you've been into, like in terms of the amount of turbulence you've experienced or the amount of pressure drop that you've seen from from run to run? What was that?
So like those are, again, every storm's a little different, and just because a storm is really strong doesn't mean it's going to be the worst turbulence. So, the greatest pressure drop that I saw was actually during Milton, where we got to the sub 900s in the center. But the actual pass that we did was fairly, gentle compared to a lot of other storms. Whereas Helene that same year was not as strong as Milton was at the time, but was a lot more violent going through, where we would get knocked up easily 2 to 3,000 feet from where we started.
Wow. Now, when you penetrate an eye wall and you get into the center of the storm and you look around and you get the stadium effect, describe what that looks like. Because we've seen pictures, sure, but you've been there. Explain how that felt.
So, like when you get the opportunity to come into the eye and you actually have that stadium effect, it really is quite, especially at nighttime, right? At nighttime, it's really amazing because you're gone from not being able to see anything because a hurricane is a lot of water and you're in a lot of clouds. So you can't usually see very far out in front of you, if at all. But when you get out into the eye and you have that nice stadium effect and the eye is nice and open and clear, and you look up and it's just like cloud, and then you just see stars or the sun for the very first time, it's really quite amazing. Unfortunately for us flying the aircraft, we usually can only enjoy that for about 15 seconds before we're trying to find the way to go through the other side of the storm and continue to collect the data that we are.
Now, what's the largest eye that you've flown through? Can you think of a storm name that you were just like, wow, this eye is just ginormous?
I can't think of a specific storm that would have like a giant eye, because throughout the life cycle of a storm, the eye will change diameter, right? We can go from a 4-mile eye to a 20-mile eye day to day. So as these storms continue to develop and organize and get stronger and then get weaker again, those eye shapes and sizes are going to change dramatically. So I've flown through 4-mile eyes, I've flown through 20-mile eyes, and sometimes those may have been on the same storm.
Now, talk to me about the whole process of the mission. When do you all start dropping dropsondes? When do you start sending data back to the Hurricane Center? And how long are these missions typically? I know they can probably vary, but I guess what's like the longest mission you've gone on?
So when we're flying hurricane missions, they're usually about 6 to 8 hours of flight time every time we go into one. So that's generally the typical range that we're going into. We've gone up to about 10 hours, but most of that is actually because the storm is well removed from any sort of viable land that we can base out of. But once we're in there, we're going to be dropping at least 7 dropsondes on every pass. We're going to do an initial inbound point. We're going to do a midpoint. We're going to do radius and max winds to kind of get that like strongest wind field that the storm has. We're going to drop a center to try to fix the center. And then we're going to do the same thing on the outbound leg. And that's at a minimum. Sometimes we're going to drop a lot more dropsondes than that. Effectively, the data is being collected from the moment we get on site until we depart, right? So we're continuously running our tail Doppler radar, which is collecting effectively like a CAT scan of the storm while we're in there. And then we're also dropping dropsondes, where it could be dropping some of our uncrewed systems, our drones that are in there, and they're going to be collecting data continuously as well.
And that data that you're collecting, you talk about how critical that is to the forecast models that meteorologists like that me use and others across the country to forecast a storm.
Yeah, so like the benefit of our aircraft, we have satellites, we have ground-based radar and stuff like that, but those don't necessarily get the opportunity to get the in situ, the inside the storm data that an aircraft can get. A satellite can only see as far as it can see, but it will attenuate, not be able to get the data. So we take the aircraft into the storm in order to get the data like live from the middle of the storm as we're going to it. And we are getting that data off to the forecasters and the models and the emergency managers in as close to real time as we possibly can. And that data alone accounts for over about 20% greater accuracy in the forecast and intensity models.
Wow, very interesting. One last question for you. You've been doing this for 5 years, you said. What's been the most busy you've been? Which season was the busiest for you?
I think probably as far as like just how rapidly we were kind of being pushed to go out was probably around 2023. If I'm remembering correctly, that was the year that we hit a period where we basically spent about 6 straight weeks flying storms. We would come back, we'd have a day or two off, and then to be into the next storm. So that doesn't always happen. Sometimes, though, during these seasons, you end up getting effectively a daisy chain of storms where they just start coming in and they just continuously come in and come in and come in. And we're really busy for that short period of time. But then there's other seasons where we don't, that may not start until September. So we have, several months where we're doing nothing. Or you could have a season like this one, which while we're forecasting below average number of storms, we've already flown a tropical storm 2 weeks ago.
Right. Yeah, it can turn busy on the drop of a dime, pretty much. All right, Lieutenant Commander Chris Wood, I really appreciate your time. I'm hoping it's going to be a quieter season for you and you get some time to rest before they send you out into some more storms. Appreciate you being here. We'll be right back after a quick break.